Hi everyone, my name is Roxana Bahari and I'm reporting for The Greyhound. Today I had the pleasure of interviewing none other than Professor Bahar Jalali. Given today's current global discourse, I think these conversations are more important than ever. I've always been super fascinated by her life, so I thought who better to sit down with than her, and I hope you enjoy our conversation.
I'm Bahar Jalali. I teach the history of the modern Middle East in the history department at Loyola.
One of my favorite things you shared in class was about the time you went viral with the hashtag Do Not Touch My Clothes. It gained international traction and was covered by outlets like The Guardian, BBC, New York Times. Could you walk us through that experience and what the hashtag means to you a little bit?
Absolutely. So I worked in Afghanistan for many years, and over the years with the decades of war and conflict, I saw the country being transformed to something that was unrecognizable to me as a child being born there. In 2021, of course, the Taliban came back to power after 20 years of the US and NATO and Afghan government fighting them. Put on this event at Kabul University, the main university in Afghanistan. Women dressed covered all black gloves, the headscarf, face covered. It's an item of clothing I've never seen before in Afghanistan. And I said, oh my God, look, this is not who we are. And I don't want the media to think that this is what Afghanistan is. All I could do is upload a photo of myself in a traditional Afghan green dress. I uploaded to Twitter. Back then it was called Twitter. Before I even knew it, I had, for 3 months straight, I was doing a media interview every single day. I uploaded my photo, and then other Afghan women throughout the diaspora began uploading their own photos in the traditional Afghan dress, very colorful. Before we knew it, it was everywhere. When you're trying to fight cultural erasure, you don't necessarily have to do it through politics or through the military. You can do it through clothing, you can do it through art, you can do it through music, any way to keep your identity alive. Imagine all the wonderful things that they could learn from you about the Middle East they'll never get from the media. The real Iran, right? And at least they'll know that, it's not pronounced Iran.
Yeah. What do you think is the driving factor in the American desensitization or even indifference of the death tolls that we see coming out of the Middle East?
That's a profound and important question, and there isn't a single answer. Civilian deaths from Iraq, Syria, Iran, Yemen, Gaza, Afghanistan are often reported as statistics rather than stories with names, faces, and context. I even heard one journalist say that, this is Ukraine, this is a civilized place where we don't expect conflict. This is not Iraq. There's this language of distancing, right? Phrases like collateral damage, militants killed, sanitizes the violence and removes the human element.
Absolutely. And so on a lighter note, growing up, one of my favorite holidays was Nowruz, the Persian New Year. So something that you shared with me was that you celebrated Nowruz at the White House under the Obama administration. And what was it like celebrating such an underrepresented holiday at one of the most represented houses in the country? And do you think there needs to be more representation on a mainstream scale?
Absolutely. And that was the very first Nowruz celebration at the White House. It was in 2015. I felt that the administration was trying to be more inclusive. It was one of the most, I would say, one of the really positive experiences I've had of growing up in this country and being from a part of the world that is traditionally, you don't really see much representation of it. Mm-hmm. And so for it to be at the White House and to be such a grand affair, it was a really nice surprise.
Why do you think that is, that there's not much representation of these holidays?
This history that I talked about the othering of the Middle East, that it's very different, that it's very foreign and it's alien. Of course, historically, the political competition, the Middle East and Islam versus the West, the political and military competition has unfortunately really dominated and completely overshadowed all the linkages and connectivities between Islam and those, and there's so many.
And so in terms of storytelling, whether that's through journalism or social media or even the classroom, what role do you think that plays in reshaping the dominant narratives surrounding the Middle East?
I think, as a historian, history is so much about storytelling, right? And so what I do in my classroom is I show a lot of, films from the region. Many wonderful documentaries, award-winning documentaries from Syria. Iran has a world-renowned film industry. And that's when it begins to register for them is that, maybe our media is kind of not telling us the whole story.
So we talk a lot about your professional achievements and career achievements, what would you say is your biggest career achievement, but then also what would you say is your biggest personal achievement?
So I would say professionally, I have two. And one was that in 2008, I translated my father's book. So my father co-wrote a book about he's a military historian. He wrote about the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. So I'm a child of that war. And so in 2008, I translated the book into Persian, into Farsi, for the Afghan army. And when I was working there, we had a very big ceremony at the Department of Defense. And the Persian translation, which I did, was disseminated to the Afghan military.
That's amazing. Given the current global discourse, what is one thing you wish more people understood about the Middle East that is usually heavily stereotyped or stigmatized?
I wish they knew that historically and culturally, the West and the Middle East have a lot more in common. I think one of my most rewarding experience there was the students that I had and how much they loved America. Many of my male students were avowed self-proclaimed feminists.
Lastly, I already kind of know the answer to this one. Why should we as a community care about the historical and current events in the Middle East, and how does it affect us?
Well, of course it affects us because as Americans, America has been heavily involved in the military, especially since World War II when the U.S. emerged as a premier Western power, right? If you just look at mainstream media, it's very hard to understand what's actually really going on. So a lot of Americans need to understand, as you mentioned, that as tax-paying Americans, as taxpayers, where their money goes, and if it's used to fund wars that create a lot of instability and violence.
So that was our last question.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. All right. We're all done.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you. Do you mind if I get some...